This episode is brought to you by Reese's Peanut Butter Cups. Some things are just better together, like party playlists and Friday nights, campfires and ghost stories, peanut butter and chocolate. And Reese's Cups are the perfect combination of creamy peanut butter and delicious milk chocolate. So, when you want something sweet, you can't do better than Reese's Peanut Butter Cups. Buy Reese's today wherever candy is sold.
In sports, the scoreboard doesn't tell the full story, but Netflix does. Stories about dads who happen to be world-class quarterbacks and a battle for the heart, soul, and direction of the multi-billion-dollar business of F1. Whether you're a diehard fan or you're brand new, Netflix has the stories for every type of fan. You can watch these incredible sports stories like Quarterback, F1 Drive to Survive, Untold, and many more now on Netflix.
Welcome to the Gentleman Ultra podcast. Today I'm delighted to be joined by Simon Cusarano, a Roma fan, master of all things audio and the super producer of Serie A Chronicles podcast. Simon, thanks for joining me.
Frank, thanks for having me back.
So Serie A Chronicles podcast, of course, which you produced with Mina Rizzucchi and Nicky Bandini. How does a guy in Perth end up producing an Italian football podcast with two people in Europe?
So you probably would have heard when Nicky and Mina and Gab Marcotti and Matteo Bonetti, they've had Kay Murray, they've had a bunch of people that were on the Serie Awesome podcast, which was run and produced by ESPN, well, up until about 2 years ago or so. So ESPN no longer had the rights for Serie A, so that podcast was kind of shelved. And Nicky Bandini put out a message saying, look, sorry, but when on Twitter, she tweeted, we're not doing the Serie Awesome podcast anymore, but if anyone's got any ideas, I would love to hear, how we could maybe start up again.
I remember seeing that tweet.
You saw it? Yeah.
Yeah, I do. Yeah.
And probably about 20 or so people had replied saying, I really hope you get something off the ground, but no one had actually offered to help out in any way. So I messaged her and I said, look, can we, have a private conversation, offline and because I've done a little bit of podcasting previously and I'd love to give it a go. So we started communicating about how it could be done. And then Nicky brought Mina into the conversation a day or two later. We did, a Zoom call like this. In the meantime, I had worked out some ideas of how we could produce it. And luckily for me, they were like, yep, let's do it. We get along like a house on fire now, the three of us. We have half-hour conversations just laughing and joking around before we actually record an episode. Sometimes we forget, we've got a podcast to make here, guys. We better just stop shooting the breeze. They're fantastic. They're fantastic to work with. Just great people, both of them.
Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah, there's a large Italian community in Perth. Back in the day of post-war migration from Italy to Australia, Fremantle, which is a coastal suburb of Perth, was the first port that everyone would arrive at. So you'd land in Fremantle and then maybe go on to Sydney, Melbourne and that kind of thing. So obviously a lot of those people got off at Fremantle at the first stop. And it's a romantic struggle to be a Roma fan, right? Because they're a club very similar to Napoli in a way that if you win something, you celebrate it for the next 10, 20, 30 years, right? Napoli's been celebrating their, Maradona era for the last 30 years.
Two very, very different players. Yeah. Were you, and even prior to that, were you able to watch and follow their Scudetto run in the early 2001? I think being in Perth, what could you see of it then and there?
Oh, I watched it, whenever it was on Ray International. We had the Ray International subscription. So if Roma was playing, I was watching. And I actually vividly remember staying up and watching the last match of that 2000-2001 season when they beat Parma at home 3-1 to clinch the Scudetto, and just the sea of red and yellow, the flags, and with 5 or so minutes to go, they're 3-1 up and the crowd rushed onto the pitch and it was just chaos. And I remember Fabio Capello just screaming at the top of his lungs, "Get off, you're going to ruin it." Romans are crazy. you just never know. A little bit like Neapolitans, I suppose, which we're going to see this season, which is exciting. I think we're obviously going to see Napoli win the Scudetto for the first time in 33 years. And I think the scenes that will come out of Naples will be just out of this world, so I'm really looking forward to that. So, yeah, I think it's going to be fantastic watching them. And they've got a beautiful team. If you look at players like Victor Osimhen and Kvaratskhelia, yes, it's hard to get that name out. They're just, like Patrick Kendrick said on our podcast last week, they're a joy to watch. Can't say it in simpler terms than that.
Yeah. And even the neutrals, like no neutral would begrudge them a victory, other than the diehard fans of some teams. But how can you not wish them well? You can't not.
As well as in the Champions League as well. I mean,
enjoy.
But yeah, it was just a great atmosphere. And yeah, I mean, the atmosphere at a tournament is amazing. I just recommend for anyone listening, if you ever have a chance to go along to a World Cup or a Euros, or I would imagine Copa America as well, of course, but I've never been there, just do it. It's a bucket list event, whether you go to one match or a bunch of matches. It's something else. It's just a party atmosphere, great vibes. It was brilliant.
Yeah.
I think about it all the time.
Hey gang, just wanted to let you know that you can now get a free 14-day trial of our Chronicles Tifosi Patreon membership.
Subscribe now for free for 14 days to get access to all of our full episodes, solo minisodes, bonus content, even behind the scene bonuses like our chats about football, and of course our chats about life in general. You can also get the entire back catalogue of Serie A Chronicles content.
So head over to serieachronicles.com/Patreon and subscribe to the Chronicles Tifosi membership for free.
Sports Social Podcast Network.
When I was diagnosed with cancer, it felt like my whole world came tumbling down.
Patient Advocate Foundation is here for you, providing free one-on-one practical support to patients with a cancer diagnosis. Call us at 800-532-5274. Patient Advocate Foundation can assist in navigating disability benefits and health insurance options. PAF also helps in accessing vital services, medications, and financial resources for both medical and household expenses. Visit patientadvocate.org or call 800-532-5274.